Friends, since morning, we have been adding value to ourselves. We have been growing. We have been evolving. We have learned that we need to think big. We have learned that apart from putting ink on paper, we also need to read and understand our balance sheets. We need to completely change the way of our per thousand thinking into a per hour thinking. And we also have to accept that print management is a reality. It's no longer going to be just you and the customer, but there's going to be a formal arrangement between you, the print manager, and the company. And for all that, we need to be ready for the next few years, for the next decades, for the next generation. And all this will only happen and materialize if we learn how to standardize everything that we do and be able to offer to the customer a product which he is sure that we will be able to follow international or local standards. To explain to us the current trends in standardization, vis-a-vis with respect to offset as well as digital printing, we have with us our next speaker, Dr.Eduard Neufeld. Dr. Neufeld is the Managing Director and Institute Director for the Fogra Graphic Technology Research Association, Munich. He is the project leader for the Boston Consulting Group, Munich. He is the Security Development Department Manager and is responsible for Research and Development Department in the field of digital media. He is a doctorate in physics from the Central Institute for the Physical Foundations of Semiconductor Electronics. He has studied physics from Cologne, Cardiff, UK. And as far as his national service goes, he's been a part of the German Air Force and has learned Russian as part of his training. His honorary positions include being the expert for the Federal Ministry of Economics and Technology for Industrial Collective Research. He's a member of the Committee of Managing Directors of the German Federation of Industrial Research Association and is the spokesman for the research organizations in Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, Saxony, and Thuringia. He is a member of the advisory board of the Print Media Academy of the Heidelberg Company. I now request Dr. Neufeld to please come on stage and give us his presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Neufeld.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me talking to you about standardization. But let's for a moment forget standardization and think of a world without standardization. There's a young lady, Sonja Lange, who works for Siemens. In fact, she is a print buyer, so she's working for the procurement of Siemens. And she came to us, to our institute, and was a bit desperate. You know, she asked us, what can she do? She is buying printed products giving print jobs to different print shops, and sometimes the result look like that what you see here on the screen. I mean, these are supposed to be 2 times the same brochure. Obviously, it isn't, and you all know how important colors are to a company. And then she also gave us another example. Here, she's a very systematic lady, and Siemens is a very large company. So what they did is they distributed one print job across several print companies, several print shops. And so what you see here is one brochure, 5 exemplars or 6 exemplars of one brochure. You see basically every kind of color, even on the projection, ranging from almost yellow to pale green. So basically she was desperate and she asked us for help. What can she do about it? In fact, help was very, very simple at that stage. We told her, you shouldn't buy at the next cheapest print shop. Maybe look for those who are able to produce according to standards. And look for those who are certified according to standards. So she was so happy with that advice, because suddenly it worked, that now, even when you go onto www.siemens.com and /print standard offset, printing standard offset PSO, then you immediately see a page at Siemens who have nothing, Siemens is not a company who has anything to do with printing technologies, but they will show you something about Fogra and something about printing standards. So something must be important about standards if such a large company has been convinced so easily. And I can assure you, it's only rare cases in history where printing errors really raised the price. Like in this case of the blue Mauritius, it's a post stamp, I don't know if it's maybe some $1 million worth, I don't know, they have printed post office instead of postpaid, and that really raised the price, but that is the exception. So in general, it's important to really meet all the specifications. Now let's say a few words about the International Standards Organization, the ISO. The ISO is a huge organization, and for the printing industry, what is most important to us is the technical committee called 130. The name is Graphic Technology. So that's the technical committee that works on printing, for the printing industry. And you see there are several working groups, and the most important ones are the prepress data exchange, process control and related metrology, media and materials. Those are the ones which really care for the processes, and then there are additional ones like ergonomics and safety, and newer ones which have just started operation, carbon footprint and post-press. And what you see is that Fogra is participating intensely in this organization. The chairman of this committee is working for Fogra, and we also have conveners and participants in the other groups. Yes, I'm showing off a little bit maybe at this stage, but the message is, although we cannot write the standards on our own, what I can assure you is that we're always part of the game. And that is not just for ourselves, it's in the interest of our members. So who is Fogra to play that role, and who are our members? Might be the next question. Just a few words who we are, Fogra Institute. I hope all of you maybe have heard the name Fogra already, but maybe not all of you know what we're doing. We have 4 fields of activity, and the very core is research and development. We have been founded exactly 60 years ago as a non-profit organization. We're up to now a non-profit organization. At the very core, we do research and development, which is mostly funded by the German government. But that wouldn't be enough. If we only did research, then most of the companies wouldn't really take notice of it. And so we go out to the companies, to the industry, we give advice, we do a lot of testing inks, testing papers, consumables, and we produce control products, like some of you might know the media wedge, for instance, to help the print shops improve in their quality and control their quality. Knowledge transfer is the next step. So we organize symposia, trainings, and last but not least, and that's why I'm here, we are involved in committee and standardization work. I'm sure you cannot read this slide. It's just to show you where our members are. We have 700 companies that are members at Fogra. We have been founded in Germany, so it's still the majority of our members are German. These are the names given below. But you see we're covering already the rest of the world with members. And this is also some reason for pride to us, because we're just an institute with 60 people, and it fills us with pride that we have members all around the globe right now. What we're doing in research, and I will keep this short because later in the afternoon I will also speak a bit about Fogra. We have 6 research departments dedicated to research and development in all fields of the printing industry. 3 covering the value chain, the other are more cross-functional, but as I said, I will keep that short. And when I want to talk about the trends in standardization, I always realize that it's even more important, first of all, to talk about the status quo. Because I'm well aware that most of you are business people, so you're not in every technical detail. And it might be even more interesting to see, first of all, where are we now? What is the status quo? Where does standardization come into play? And then to see which are the trends that we're heading to. Currently, I would say the most important step that we have made during the last 10 years came through this standard, which is called 12, given the number 12647, forget the number. That's what we call, in fact, the process standard offset. And that was what the lady from Siemens liked so much. The challenges that every print shop is facing is that every single production step has its error tolerance. And every material, every consumable that we use has error tolerances. If we put all this together, it means that we come into an iterative process to achieve the expected quality. And once you change something, you take a new paper, new ink, new plate, for instance, then suddenly you need again a trial and error process to achieve the quality. Something has happened to the, comes back, okay. Seems to work. Okay, I hope it stays. So what this standard does, or first of all, all this results obviously in inefficient work, and it results also in bad customer interaction, and maybe in some quality deficits. What this standard does, the standard I'm talking about, the printing standard offset, is it describes all the tolerances of every and each production step, and of all the consumables involved. So by the end of the day, it defines the quality of the printed product. And to do so, it gives very clear interfaces and responsibilities from creation to prepress to press. So that's what basically the standard does. And it should result in quick and reliable and reproducible printed products. Now, we have developed it a bit further in our institute. We have written specifications about it in order to supplement the standard. Because if you really want to utilize it, then you need some additional descriptions and control devices, otherwise you can't use it. And this is what we've done, and we've called that process standard offset printing. Now, let me briefly introduce you again to this standard in a bit more detail. What you see is that there's a first part which is not so important for us here now. It's just describing measurement methods. And then there are parts 2 and 3 describing offset printing. One general for offset, and the other one for cold set offset printing, for newsprints. And then and these are the two that I'm going to talk about here. And then there are parts 4 to 6 for gravure, flexo, and screen. And there are, again, 2 additional parts, 7 and 8, which are more related to the proofing side of it, and to validation print, which is something very similar to the proofing. But as I said before, that's not enough. What's very important when you use a standard is that you also apply it to every other step as well. For instance, it relates to the viewing conditions. They have a standard on their own, but it relates to them. They have a standard relate to the standard for color management, for inks, for color measurement. And as I said before, at Fogra, it's our daily job to test all these components, to test the viewing cabins, to test the inks, that they have the right amount of pigment and coloration given a certain thickness, for instance. We test all of them for compliance, so that by the end of the day, a printer who chooses to work according to the standard and who chooses all these components doesn't need trial and error anymore. So what this means is, let's assume first of all you have some image that you want to print. Then you separate the colors. For that you need to know what will the output device be, what will the substrate be, what gamut will you use by the end of the day. You can then separate it, so that's the pre-press part of it. You send it to the press, and then again there is a well-defined process control. I don't want to go into details. Tone value increases, solid coloration. But what it simply means is that you can rely on the data that you have sent in, and if everyone works according to these standards, the result is predictable. And in fact, it really works. That's maybe the major point here, and that's why I think it was, to me, one of the key success factors of standardization during the last 10 years. Meanwhile, we have certified more than 400 printing companies according to this standard worldwide. And as I said before, we're checking all the consumables, inks, papers, and so forth on a daily basis to make sure that a company that works according to this process really can rely on the entire process. And we have partners for that now also worldwide. What's in it for the print buyers? And I started this when I talked about Siemens. For them, it simply means they can rely on a process that works, not only on the results. I mean, of course, they can also rely then on the quality, that you have the right color management in place. But they can also rely on time schedules. They know that there's not the big, long trial and error process. They don't need to go on site and quarrel if the red is really red or if it's more orange than red. And it was so successful, basically, in many countries in Europe that many of the big buyers even acquired the language of the PSO. PSO is printing standard offset. So suddenly, you know, when Siemens or BMW or other big print buyers go to a print shop, then they even speak this language in terms of tolerances. You know, they, of course, don't understand the technical details, and they don't want to, and they don't have to. But what they do is they understand that there are certain tolerances, and they ask the printer if he can fulfill a certain tolerance, and if yes, so he gets the job. And of course, that raises also the price for the print jobs, because those companies who can fulfill those requirements can sell for a bit higher price. So in fact, first of all, it was a means to increase revenues. Most of the print shops wanted to convince the print buyers that they have something very special and that they have a good selling proposition. But what they realized very soon is that the cost lever is even stronger. Once you have such a standard in place and the process is running and you reduce the amount of trial and error, then in fact you save a lot of money, you save a lot of time, you save paper, for instance, and many company or managing directors told me that the saving effect here is even stronger than the pure revenue effect. If all that works fine, so why am I standing here and why do we need to talk about trends? Of course, there is still a way to go. Of course, there are still things that don't work perfectly. Let me introduce you now to a few trends, to a few things that we're working on, which also may become part of the standardization process. Currently, print-to-proof match, as you all know it, works based on paper. So typically, you have some data. You first use, for instance, an inkjet device to print a proof, which is called the contract proof here, because it also serves as the legal part with your customer. And then it is put into production, and by the end of the day, it can be compared, the production print and the proof. But why not doing the proof with the image that you see on the monitor? That should work too. And in fact, we're not only working on it, there will be a standard related to it. So the idea is, and as I come from Munich, Fogra Institute is sited in Munich, I've just given this example how this could work. Let's imagine in Munich we have the pre-press department, and they prepare the data exactly according to the printing standard offset. And let's imagine that they are reliably checked, the data reliably checked on the monitors, as you see them on the picture on the left. And then they send this data to Mumbai, and then it can be printed. Again, it needs to be, we need to rely that everyone is working according to the standard. It's being printed here in Mumbai, for instance, and the print-to-proof match can be checked with a display. So what you see here on the, is a monitor and the production print. So they are compared then. So it means that we can rely on the data that are sent over, and we can rely on what we see on the display. Of course, that is not at all a trivial task to do, because I will just show you a few of the challenges. Imagine when you have a monitor in front of you and you move a bit, you change the angle. All of you have seen that already, the colors change, the lightness change. And so here in this example, many photos have been shot from a monitor from various angles. You see how much they change. So this would be an inappropriate monitor or display device. And also the environment needs to be suitable. If, for instance, you have a very dark environment, or in this case an orange-red light environment, you would never be able to rely on what your monitor gives you. So, in fact, you need some really neutral gray ambient. Whether your people like it in your company or not, that's another question, but at least by the end of the day, you depend on neutral light conditions, right viewing angle, and many more aspects. And I cannot go into every detail here, of course, but what I can tell you is that once we have finished this research work and then we have written a handbook on this topic, within a few weeks, I think within 3 weeks, it was downloaded 12,000 times. So I was amazed and shocked by it. It simply shows you how important it seems to be for the international printing industry if there are so many downloads of this handbook in such a short time. And all of you can download it. It's free to download. what it tells you, it describes you how to basically establish a display or monitor setup that is really reliable with regard to all colors, and what does the user need to know about it. We'll talk about the next example, also something that we're working on, and that is called consistent appearance of colors. So you know that the number of devices onto which a certain image is going to be displayed is increasing. It's increasing on the printed side, let's say the digital offset, rotogravure, cold set, whatever you think of, and for that it needs to be separated into magenta, yellow, and cyan. And there are also an increasing number of devices, active light devices, like an iPad, iPhone, smartphones, a monitor display. And what we expect is that they always look the same. For larger companies, it's very important that on every kind of device, on every printed product, you still discover what they wanted to convey. Although these devices have completely different gamuts, so they have completely different abilities to display colors. And what I want to show you here is now some examples how things can be done and how they should be done and what we're working on. On the very left column, you see the reference, 3 times the same picture. So on the left, where you see this black square around. Then let's say you have one printer, or you can even think of a digital printer, or you can think even of an active iPad device. It has a large gamut. And think of printer C, who has a very little gamut. Think of a cold set press, newsprint, for instance. In the first row, that's the worst thing that can be done, but it is often done, and the Siemens example that I showed you at the very beginning is exactly an example for that. The data are just, native data are just fed into the system, and you simply are surprised what colors there appear. So even, I think, through the projection, you can see that the colors are completely different, and you wouldn't think that's consistent. In the middle row, you see something that is, of course, absolutely consistent, but also absolutely stupid, I would say. So what has been done in the middle row is that you have taken the least denominator. You have basically looked at the printer C, who has a very little gamut, and then you've applied these colors to all of the pictures. And of course it works, and it's very consistent, but you know, it's a waste for printer C because he cannot take advantage of his system, of the gamut, for instance, of digital printing. So the third row is an optimization. It tries to optimize every gamut, so it takes advantage of all the colors that a system can provide and still tries to make them look very much the same. But how this is done is a very complicated way, and it depends very much on if your pictures are more technical or if they're more natural. And we're working currently, we have a PhD thesis in our institute running on how to optimize these, of course automatically, so that you have a very consistent appearance of all the images that are played across all kind of media channels. I think it will be increasingly important in a society where you read the same news once on a smartphone, next day on a paper, for instance. Now, that were some examples of trends for the offset printing. And now I would like to talk a bit about digital printing too. But you know, the world is a bit different for digital printing. Let's come back for a second to offset printing. What you see here is that the success of the standard was that they have clear-cut interfaces between substrate, the printing press, and the ink. There are clear-cut interfaces, so basically that means you can choose. You can choose to have a Manugraph or Heidelberg printing press. You can choose a substrate, you can choose the ink, and we ensure that they are all compliant according to the standards. The situation, as you might know, is completely different in digital printing. Here you have the triangular for every company. It's partly due to technological reasons, of course, because substrates and inks rely much more on a specific technology, for instance, on the nozzle of the inkjet system. It might be also a bit part due to business aspects. They want to bind the consumables to their own company. So the situation is different, and we cannot just proceed with the same standard. So there is no production standard for digital printing yet. We're eagerly working on it, and it will look differently. We cannot just copy it. For the reasons I've given to you, we cannot also make the simple distinction according to the technologies, like in the offset situation. Instead, we will make the distinctions according to use cases, products, digital production, large format, and so forth. So we are working on it. We have a working group in place currently and doing a lot of research in this direction. I've just been signaled that I should come to an end, and I'll try to do so. There are other and many other hot topics that we have at Fogra that I simply didn't find the time to present to you. I only just go through them, rush through them so that you get an idea, and whenever you're interested in, you can visit our homepage and, of course, contact us. A big issue for us currently is also the proof-to-print match when we're dealing with high levels of optical brightening agents. Optical brightening agents are these components which make the native yellow color turn to white, to really brilliant white paper. But the problem then is that for proofing, you always take paper without optical brightening agents. For a very good reason, because optical brightening agents tend to fade out, and they would lose every legal aspect if, as a contract proof if you had optical brightening agents in proofing paper. So that's a big issue, and we are working on this to be more predictable with these very white papers. We have projects running for the ghosting effects. Ghosting effects are the effects when the image of, let's say, the front side appears on the back side. You see some shadowy lines. There are different chemical and physical reasons to that. There are basically a whole lot of different effects termed ghosting effects, and we have research projects running and also laboratory simulation, which might become a standard. We are working on integrating spot colors into the standards, and also, of course, on the PDF-X format, we work quite a lot. It's also a very important exchange format, and we need to make sure that we are in the state of the art, also according to the rest of the process. As I said, just visit our website if you want to see more. One last question. Now, we talked about all these business and very serious technological issues, but now the most important key question, I'm not quite serious about it, is standardization really important for our lives? If some of you might think it's not so important for our lives, then I can convince you you're wrong. You know, one of my people was on holidays last year in Australia. And in Australia, you have these beautiful animals, crocodiles, beautifully to look at, but dangerous, in fact. And because the Australians know that too, that it's very dangerous, they put warning signs along the river. So what the warning sign shows you is a swimmer in black ink. It shows you a red cross, don't swim here. Why? And then in green ink, yeah, because there are crocodiles. Dangerous. After a year, look what has happened. To me, that looks as if it was saying, please swim here. The red ink almost disappeared. The green crocodiles completely disappeared. The only thing remained was the black ink showing the swimmer. And what I can assure you is that this would not have happened to a Fogra member. We would have checked the ink for fading resistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Neufeld. I think you ended with a literal bang, so driving the point across how important standardization is. Friends, Dr. Neufeld is, of course, going to come to us for a second session, where he will be talking about the research that Fogra is doing. And he will also take in a lot more questions on various topics. But if there are any questions just now, we have time for about 2 questions based on standardization. If anyone has any questions based on the current presentation, you are free to do that. Yes, Aman bhai.
Dr. Neufeld, how can we in India adapt this?
Yes, it's a very important point. In fact, I said we have a partner program running for this standardization across the world, and we're just about to establish partners here in India too. Probably Heidelberg will become a partner so that you can make use of them here in India, and potentially others as well, maybe even the association, because we have in the world and many countries we have the printers associations as our partners. But it always will mean that we will check, when we certify it, we will really do the difficult checking of all the colors, of all the parameters. It simply means that the partner is on site here. We don't have to travel all that way. And so the partner will consult you in a way, but we will do the very strict checking. So the answer is, in I think 2 months' time, it might be possible for India. Otherwise, of course, it's possible if your contract is us from Germany, but then it's more expensive, for sure.
Dr. Neufeld, I'm sure there must be a few happy digital printers here because even Fogra doesn't have any production standards for digital as yet. So are there any questions coming from any digital people who might be worried about the future? Any more questions?
Over there.
Fine. We'll have Dr. Neufeld again for the second session. Please give him a big hand. Thank you. Now we have session number 2 again with Dr. Neufeld, where he's going to take his topic on standardization with Fogra and the research that Fogra is doing a little further. Unfortunately, due to the time constraints, we are requesting him to cut his presentation a little short, and he has kindly consented to do the same because we wouldn't want to go a little slow on the rest of the back on stage. Oh.
Already there?
Yeah. Thank you.
Just a second.
All right.
I think that,
Yeah, you're late.
I've been asked to, as was pointed out, to change a bit my talk and to talk a bit more about Fogra, in fact. So I called this talk now Fogra in a nutshell, because obviously there was some interest in what we're doing at Fogra, what our research projects are about, and so I've changed it a bit and tried also to cut it down so we all can finish in time. Let's briefly recall, and I don't know if I made this point very clear in my first talk, that Fogra is a members association, like BMPA is a members association. And we have members all across the world, and also every Indian company is heartily welcome, warmly welcome to join Fogra as a member. And I hope I will talk a bit about our projects and our services so that you see what it actually means, what we're doing at Fogra. The members of Fogra do not only come from all parts of the world, but they also come from the entire value chain. So more than a third, or about a third of our members are suppliers of paper, of printing presses, of consumables, of measurement equipment, and the rest comes basically from the printing industry itself. Now, we have, as I mentioned briefly before, 6 research departments at Fogra, which make up basically all research projects. And I would like to talk a bit about that so that you get an impression of what we're doing. We have 3 departments covering the value chain of the printing industry, basically pre-press technologies, printing techniques, print finishing, and identity cards. And then, for instance, in pre-press technology, we are concerned with all the questions related to color management, soft proof that I've been talking today briefly. Color reproduction, color measurement, all these questions. Printing techniques is related, as the name might suggest, to everything, all the parameters in printing. Also the standardization that I've been talking about. These projects are run here. Projects on parameters like tone value increases, on coloration, solid coloration, for instance. And then we have a third department about print finishing identity cards. So first of all, of course, these are the projects about book binding and finishing. But maybe more excitingly and more in the future direction, all the things that are related to identity cards, to security aspects, and to electronics. So we have to do a lot with printed electronics. We test all these components in security cards and identity cards. And to my knowledge, at least, we are the only accredited body in this sector. So we have, from the Canadian driving license to every passport in the world, we get them through Fogra and see if they really work. Then we have cross-functional departments like materials, which stands for basically paper, substrates, and inks. And we do not only look at these materials in particular, so not only at papers, how they, on their runnability, on the printability, or on the ink aspects like the flow characteristics, rheology, and also coloration, but we look at the interactions. That's where it really becomes very interesting when we see how do they interact. Many phenomena can only be explained when you look at the combination, like the ghosting effects, which I've mentioned also briefly. Also another project that I can, let's say, briefly show here is on the optical brighteners. I don't know if you all know what optical brighteners are. These are the chemical substances that make paper white. And what you see there is at the bottom, you have the native yellow-looking paper, as it comes naturally. And then you have on the upper right corner those with the maximum content of optical brighteners. And so what they do is they look white because they luminesce under UV light, which is shown here. Once you put on UV light, then the other papers stay dark, and the papers containing optical brighteners, they become very light. Now, the problem related to that is that it's very difficult to handle such papers when you use them in the printing process. The print-to-proof match is very often extremely poor. Sometimes very poor because also the measurement devices do not contain the right UV light, and because there are also many obstacles, and I've mentioned already before that for the proof process, you cannot use these optical brighteners because that would be an easy answer. Just make them equal, same paper for both processes, for proofing and for printing, but that doesn't work for legal aspects because the proof paper is supposed not to alter over time, not to be changed over time. And so we're working on a project like this here to make it more predictable so that the printers know exactly how to use these very white papers, because the customer wants it. And there's no sense in if a printer would say, no, I don't want to use it because it's so difficult to handle. The point is that the customers really want to have it. Let's proceed with our departments. We have a department for environment and chemistry. And we've talked today a lot about green printing. And that's also one of the major issues for our environment and chemistry projects. For instance, we deal or have some projects running on the topic of recycling. We talked today about, I think somebody said that maybe very important future development will be in UV printing. Unfortunately, UV prints can be de-inked very badly. It's very difficult to de-ink them in the standard recycling process. And then we had another talk on digital printing. And obviously, that's something that is growing at a rapid pace. It's rapidly growing, but again, we have the difficulty that digital printing, especially inkjet printing, can hardly be de-inked in the common technology. It's really an issue. It's not the fault of the technologies by themselves, because if we were to design the inking or recycling concepts for these technologies, that would be easy. We would be able to do that. But the recycling industry is already an industry in place, and they don't want to throw away all their investments. So there is an industry in place, and using, for instance, digital inkjet printed papers simply makes the pulp and the paper grayer. So what that means is that the paper, either if it's grayer, it's less worthy, then you cannot use it for all purposes anymore, or if you put more fiber into it, more fresh fiber, it's more costly. And then again, you have problems in with the business concept of the recycling. And it's also damage to our environment if we reduce the utilization of recycled paper. So here it's very important for us to find solutions to this, and we have research projects running on both on UV prints and on digital prints to make them, or to change the process a bit so that we can de-ink them in a better way. Because that will be increasingly important as the share of digital printed papers will increase dramatically. And so to us it looks a bit like a time bomb, which is not known by many people, but we need to get this roadblock away before it's really seen. And then we have a department also for quality management where we create all these device or control devices like the media wedge and test forms so that every printing company can utilize them and make sure that it stays in control of all the parameters. So these are the research departments we have, and I talked about that already. It's very important for us that we do not simply stop when we have finished research projects. We are asked by our members that we create some services out of it, because otherwise our members would not really participate and would not really see the results of it. So I don't want to go through all the services. You see that we have, for instance, a Fogra Cert testing program in place where we test all the materials, processes, machines, skills, so that everything gets into harmony, if you will. And for instance, if you bought a machine from Heidelberg or Manroland or Manugraph, then we could go there and make sure that also the machine is appropriate and handles everything correctly. So that's something that we do. And just to give you another example, we do, of course, various kind of analysis, imaging analysis, or let's talk about also this example here. We check various kind of liquids and chemicals that go into the machine. For instance, washing liquids or fountain solutions, they tend to harm the machine. Sometimes they lead to corrosion within a printing press. And so we have checked, I think by now, more than 800 of these liquids. And the interesting, or the good part about it is that the printing press manufacturers trust Fogra so much that they say when a printer uses such a tested liquid, then they guarantee that they cover the damage if there will be any damage. So that means that it's kind of a triangular relationship. You know, we do the testing, the guarantee comes from the printing press manufacturer, and the printer can be sure that when he uses one of these tested liquids, there will be no harm to his machine, or he will have the damage recovered. So, as I said, as I promised, I wanted to give only some very few examples so that you have an understanding of what the 60 engineers, chemists, and physicists are doing in Munich. I hope you also trust these people when you're handling with these technical questions, and every one of you is welcome to contact us and to get in touch with us if he has a problem or if he wants to have some consultancy. As I said, we are a non-profit organization, so this is, I'm not trying to advertise anything, you know, just to make profit out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Neufeld. Do we have any questions for Dr. Neufeld? Anyway, Dr. Neufeld,
there's one.
Oh, there's one. Please.
In printing, if you're in packaging printing, for example, for pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of duplication that happens. Is Fogra into some sort of research where you can authenticate the packaging that it is from an authorized source? Yeah. And not from a spurious source. Are you into some sort of certification research that can authorize the packaging from a authorized printer and not from a spurious or a duplicating printer?
Yes, we're just in the process of starting a joint project with several institutes where we try to make sure that, or where we would like to use RFID technology to authenticate the products, especially in the high-priced region of either pharmaceuticals or in the perfume market, for instance. Typical products which tend to be copied, and we have several ideas at the moment, so the project has not yet started, but we have several ideas and we would like to collaborate here with other institutes as well, with institutes from the paper side, also from the plastics side, to find a solution where you have RFID components, which on the one hand ensure the authenticity of the product, but at the same time also track some parameters like temperature and climate, because that can also sometimes harm the product and can give you additional information. But here we are at the very start of such a project. And then, I don't know if that's also related to this question of packaging. We're also doing research in the field of contamination that may come either from UV printing or also from mineral oil if you use recycled fibers. So also topics that we are addressing.
Yeah, Doctor, one question. What future do you see of RFID technology in packaging, in folding box board packaging?
Thank you very much. I think it's a very difficult question because it will highly depend on the price on which the RFID components will be realized. At the moment, I see a future in a niche market, only where you have really high-priced products. So I just gave the example of pharmaceuticals or perfumes or things like that. Then it doesn't really matter if the chip might cost, let's say, 50 cents, something like that. Then it's, you can put this somehow into your cost scheme. And then the added value is pretty high. But RFID components are getting cheaper and cheaper, and the more you might realize them even by printed electronics, then they can get really cheap in the cent region, 1 or 2 cents. And then I believe they will have a major impact on our economy. But it depends very much if that is achieved, and it can take many years until we are at this 1 cent or 2 cent level.
I'll reposition my question. Future of usage of RFID in logistics, in the outer packing, the shipper packing. Because I believe Walmart has already started the pilot project of implementing RFID on their outer packs.
Yeah. I try to refer to it. I don't believe that it will work right now in the supermarkets because most of the products are not expensive enough. If you are dealing with products which have a worth of, let's say, $50, then it doesn't make sense to attach an RFID component if it's still too expensive currently, or if it can be easily forged, because then somebody attaches it. So to have real good devices, at the moment, they are too expensive to be used for cheap products. So they will only be used in retail, where the price level is a bit higher. And to be effective for a mass market, I would say we need some years to come until the costs go down. That would, to me, be the precondition of a mass market. But currently, it is important, and many are also working on decreasing the costs, for instance, by printed electronics.
We normally feel that a delta E of 2 is good enough for printing a match. But in my practical experience, I have found that sometime when the color is out of delta E2, but visually they match. And sometime I have found the other way around, where I find that color is within the delta E2, but visually they don't match. Why is that?
Very important question. It might have 2 reasons. One is exactly what I was talking before, when you're using papers that have optical brighteners, so very white papers. That is a natural effect. Very often the reason is that the measurement equipment has not the right light. In the printing industry, we're working with D50 light, and D50 light has a certain amount of UV. But because optical brighteners didn't play such an important role in, let's say, 15 years ago, you find many measurement devices that have a too low content on UV light. So what they measure is wrong by the end of the day, when you have high amounts of optical brighteners. That's one point why it can be misleading. And the second is the concept of these delta E's, the color deviations, as it is used now, was established in 1976. So a long time has elapsed, and what we have seen now is that it doesn't really match our feeling. When we judge as a human being upon color differences, we see, for instance, that a delta E in the yellow regime is completely different from same delta E in the blue regime. And that is also something that we're trying to correct with new schemes, but it's very difficult to get them into the market because people have been used to this C-Lab system from 1976. But these are 2 aspects which both go in the direction that they are misleading in the numbers. One is simply a wrong measurement because the wrong light is used in many current devices. and the other is that even the scheme itself is not perfect and needs to be improved.
Well, I've been using X-Rite 500 series, so I assume that that the light source is good enough.
I would not. It's not a fault of X-Rite. It's simply all of the companies are yet now in the moment where they want to improve it, because it has not been so easy to find light sources which give perfect D50 light. It's not a fault of X-Rite. At the moment, the companies are really improving because they use LEDs for it, and so they can better adjust the different light levels. So at the moment, really, we have a lot of devices from very good companies in the market, and X-Rite is certainly a very good company, which still do not really perfectly fulfill it. And that's the reason why we're working on this project, why we need to help people with the current devices to make it more predictable.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neufeld. I will now request Dr. Anaya to come and felicitate Dr. Neufeld. Friends, let's give them a big hand, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you very much.